Welcome to Wealth and Wellness with Grace Nabasabla.
I appreciate you for coming. The goal for this seminar actually is three things for me. One is knowing the real estate basics, the what, the why, the who, how, when. And two is figuring out where you are in the process and what's stopping you. And three is the next step you need to take today. Because sometimes I hear so many people, they go to seminars, they leave, and then nothing is done. For me to be helpful, I want to make sure at least you realize where you are, because then once you figure out exactly where you are, what your situation is, then you can take action. Because before then, you can't take any action, or you might not know how to take the action. And the procrastination stays there and keeps prolonging the process. Before you know it, it's 20-some years and you haven't done anything about it. The way I started, I'll start with my story. I like sharing my stories. How I became a homeowner. That's a big thing for me because it really changed me. Initially, I rented this particular property for 7 years. And August 5th, 2013, I remember that day clearly because I was staying with a friend of mine here in Baton Rouge for 5 days. I literally left Hammond, drove to Baton Rouge for 5 days, and the reason was because I was literally fleeing my apartment. And I said fleeing because on August 1st, while sitting in my living room, I look back and I see this particular animal that was not welcome in my house.
Was it a rat?
At my back door.
A snake?
Ended up being a snake.
No.
I had 2 toddlers in the house. So on the right, thankfully we had the door on the right side. I pick up my toddlers, ran outside the door, and while running, I kept telling myself, I'm never coming back to this apartment. I'm never coming back to this apartment. But then when the neighbors called my husband, he was like, "But we don't have anywhere to go. Where are we going to go? We can't just leave." And then all that sipped in again. So I was like, you know what? Let me just take a little breather, go somewhere for like a week, and I'll figure it out. And on my way to Baton Rouge, I had this prayer: God, make it impossible for me to stay in that particular apartment. And I kept saying that prayer. Until on the 5th. That's when my husband had called with the news that we had been evicted. So I literally thought it was a joke. I was like, you're just saying this to make me happy that we are finally moving. And he's like, no, we literally got a notice that we've been evicted. So can you imagine paying rent for 7 years just to find out that you've been evicted?
Wow.
Nobody told you anything ahead of time. And yet, I knew the landlord. I thought we were friendly, right? He didn't tell us anything, but he wasn't paying his mortgage. So on that day, I realized we were really powerless, and we had given up our power by not becoming homeowners. And I made sure that whatever I had to do from that day on, I had to get into a home. And that's why I'm very passionate about helping other people becoming homeowners, because I know how it changed me. And in the next 120 days, I made sure whatever I did was towards homeownership. So I'm hoping that's going to help you on this journey, because it doesn't take 120 days or even longer than that. Most times it takes whatever time you want it to take, because you can ask Christy
Who
how
goes
long.
alone in 2 weeks?
Exactly.
So I have somebody that wrote a contract yesterday, and they have to be out of their home in 2 weeks. So we're going to close them in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
The biggest part is getting pre-approved, and whenever you're ready, we'll go into that. But it's everybody's so scared of the process. That's why we hold these classes. Because I know, like me, when I go buy a car, I am freaking out because it's nerve-wracking when anybody pulls your credit or looks at your financials. But we really try to make it easy. I did notice something on here. VA, we can go down to a 580.
Wow.
And I can go up to $2 million on 100% financing. So if you know anybody that's a veteran, that is the best loan program out there. So,
Wonderful.
Yeah, so you might want to update that, because a lot of these numbers are changing, and as the market gets a little better, you'll even see credit scores go down and things like that.
Okay, thank you. But so that's why it's very important for you to at least attend these classes, like Chrissy said, because for me, actually, if I back up with that story, I really wanted a house before that date. And counting down from when we were doing the countdown to 2013 at midnight, literally, me and my kids were literally praying, God, help us get a house this year. So when August hit, I didn't think there was anything. I was like, you know what? God can send me my prayer like this. This can be the answer to my prayers. With the snake, something that really scared me. So I dismissed it. But that's exactly what I've been praying for. So I don't know what exactly your prayer is. However, if you pray or ask for something, I'm sure it's coming up somewhere. And those answers are coming to you. You just have to take the action. So, what do realtors do? Do you know why realtors are important in this process?
No.
Okay. So, just imagine the house of your dreams. So, we are literally the key to getting you to that house, right? So, that's why I have this key on, because I want you to imagine that. Why are we important? Because we'll definitely help you get to that process. And of course, we work with professionals like Christy. We work Toby, everybody on our team to make sure we get you to your home. I've had some people who are like, we don't need a realtor, we can just get a property on our own and represent ourselves. This is a big investment. And most times, this is the biggest investment in somebody's life. So you want to make sure you have somebody on your team who has your best interest at heart. And on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being I'm not ready, I can't, 5 being fair, okay, I'm getting there, okay, I want to 10 being I made it, I can do this, right? Where do you see yourself?
I think because
It's a hard question. Huh?
It is.
That is a hard question. It's okay if you don't know. A lot of people just don't know. They just kind of know that they eventually want to own a house, but don't know the time frame if you don't know credit or debt to income or all those terms that we talk about. But the good news is you can get started now, and then you can decide if you want now or you want later. So that's kind of how we do it, depending on credit and debt to income. And we'll talk about that in a little while.
Very true. However, what I'm trying to remind you is it's all in the mind.
Yeah.
Because you're telling yourself you can't. Nobody can tell you any different. But if you tell yourself you can, that shift in that mindset, everything will be possible for you. And it took a change of mindset for me to become a homeowner. Even when we were not approved the first time when we asked, we were not approved. And we kept trying because I knew there's something there that was possible. So keeping that positive mindset is everything on this journey. And of course, like Chrissy said, when you start getting pre-approved, you might not have everything together. Maybe it could be credit, it could be income, it could be a few things. But that positive mindset will help you get there. And I have a do list and a don't list right in front of you. I share this list because most times when we start, we might not know what to do and what not to do. On the do list, making sure you get pre-approved to know exactly where you are in the process. Choosing a reputable lender, like Christy, of course, with Fairway. Doing the math to see exactly what is the monthly income or monthly mortgage you're okay paying. Looking at your needs instead of just your wants. because just our wants won't fulfill what we're trying to do. You have to focus on your needs first. Looking at several homes and then getting to commit to something, researching neighborhoods, knowing your credit score, which Christy will show you or share with you when you get through the pre-approval. We'll help you with the negotiation process, and keeping your insurance company, and also going through all that paperwork. We'll explain all that paperwork with you. Asking questions is very important in this process, because if you have a question, text it, call somebody right away instead of waiting till the last minute. And remember, there are programs with 0 down payment. Christy will talk about those programs soon.
Yeah.
And being honest and forthcoming, because even if you keep something from your loan officers, they'll find out.
We are like CSI, right? I had somebody say the other day, well, I didn't really want to, we found out something. She said, well, I didn't really want to tell you that. I said, you have to tell us everything, because there are more programs now than there ever used to be for underwriters and loan officers to find if you have a self-employed business, if you've owned another property, if you've, had collections from student loans for 20 years ago, right? There's all kind of things. So I tell everybody, we're putting a story together, the story of your life before your house, and then letting the underwriter know how you're going to live your life in credit responsibility after the house. And I think people don't think of it that way, right? They just think I'm getting pre-approved. But for me, my job is I have to take it from the paper and write your story. So that's why we need to know everything. And people get nervous to tell us everything, and I always say we're going to find it out anyway. So you might as well let us know, and then we can help you through it. So that's super important.
Okay.
Super important. I want to add one more thing too on the do list. Whether it's me you choose or another lender, always say don't go in it blindly. Don't let the lender tell you just what you're pre-approved for. Figure out how much you think you can afford a month, because it's kind of like going to buy a car and they put that Lamborghini and that Toyota in the parking lot and they tell you to choose. Well, which one are you going to choose?
Toyota.
Well, okay. That's because you're going to have to pay for it, right?
Normal people.
But normal people, if I put a car out there, they're like, well, I'm going to like the Lamborghini better. And then 6 months later, they don't like the note on the Lamborghini. So I tell everybody, lenders are going to, and I'm super transparent, we are salespeople. We're going to tell you your max pre-approval. But before you get pre-approved, you need to know what you're comfortable with. So my first question is always, how much do you want to pay in a mortgage note? Now, of course, we'll tell you, hey, you can go up to this amount, but this is the note. But we start where you're comfortable, because you don't want to look at a $500,000 house if you only want the note on a $200,000 house, because then nothing will compare. So it's very important that you as a buyer know what the max you can afford is, and don't get carried away if you get pre-approved for more, because 6 months later you have to, or a month later you have to pay that note. So always add that in there.
That's very important.
Yes, very important.
Definitely. Yeah. And the don't list, making sure you don't forget about the closing costs. We mentioned how some other programs might have 0 down. However, think about the other items. If you need to do inspections, that's cash. You need to have some money saved. And even HOA, right? Insurance, all that are prepaid items, and taxes. So you have to have some money saved, at least working towards some savings. The second one is assuming you're able to buy a house just because you have a down payment, because they look at everything, not just what you have for the down payment. Making any large purchases before closing. This is a very big point, because some people go out there and purchase cars because they feel like, okay, if I can afford a house, I can afford a car. I tell them, do not pass the parking lot, okay, of a car dealership, because they'll suck you into getting a car. So if you can avoid it, that's a big thing. Stay away from car dealerships. neglecting to think about the cost of home improvements. Because in this process, when you start, you have to continue saving some money towards your home improvements. Making a purchase based on emotion. That's anything. You're tired, hungry, you go shopping on Amazon.
Yes.
No, we're not doing that. Everything has to be thinking about the priority, the price, the grand price. Changing jobs. This is very, very big. In fact, Christy will probably touch on this.
Yes.
Changing jobs in between the process.
It's really not a bad idea. And I know that's funny to hear lenders say that.
Mm-hmm.
Most lenders will say don't change jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally opposite. Can I explain that really quick?
Sure,
Because you may not
definitely.
know this either.
Yeah.
So what happens is you always hear don't change jobs, don't change jobs, don't change jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the truth. So I'm going to set the truth straight today. If you are getting a better job for your family, then you need to talk to your lender before accepting the job. And let me tell you how we make that work. I had somebody that was in a contract. They had had the contract for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
They got a job offer that they could not refuse. It was a lot more money for their family. Did you know that most loan programs allow you to close on a loan before you even start the new job? You can get an offer letter. I know. A lot of lenders don't want to do this. We do it all the time because we don't want your family to suffer because you're trying to get a house, right? Because at the end of the day, a house is important, but you have to have money to live. So what the rule is, and everybody thinks you have to be on the job 2 years. That's not true either. It's about the line of work. So what line of work are you in?
Right now, I actually did switch a job.
You did. Perfect.
So right now I work at Apton,
Okay.
and we just basically clean out FEMA trailers.
Awesome. And what were you doing before that?
Overnight stocking at Walmart.
Okay. So see, for me as a lender, I could tie that together, right? Because you're doing labor, you're a laborer. So how long were you at Walmart?
6 months.
Okay. And then before that, did you have a job as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
At Roscoe FR.
Okay. I'm asking you all this because we need a 2-year history. If during that 2-year history there's any lapse of employment of greater than 90 days, we have to explain it, okay? But if you've had consistent employment for the last year or 2 years and you change jobs now, we can use that income. So I know that's probably a question of yours because everybody thinks.
I wasn't going to ask that question. I was just
See
gonna,
how smart I am? You see, we're new best friends. So no, I know that because that's such a misconception. It's about putting the story together, right? So if I can explain that you were at this job, but you took this job because it's more money. Now let me tell you the trick. If you're working overtime on the new job, we won't be able to use that until you have like a 6-month history because we won't know what the history of that is. But if you're just using base pay, let's say your hourly wage and you're working 40 hours a week at least, we could use that base pay as long as you're W-2. Now if you go to 1099, which is self-employed or contract work, that's different rules. You have to usually do that for a year minimum, okay? In some cases 2, but if you just change jobs, that doesn't matter. Remember I told you about that story I write? It depends on how good a writer I am. And my story is going to be why you change jobs, you know, this X amount of times in 2 years. And if it makes sense, it's not a problem. So we also have someone moving from California that's been there for years and they're moving here. She got an offer letter to start here and I think it was just November. We are closing her. We just closed her in October. You don't even have to be on the job before you close. Now, there's a lot we have to do with the employer, but I'm glad I thought of that question, right? So I always say, you know, take our card. I answer 7 days a week. I work 7 days a week. If something comes up or you hear somebody say something, just text me. I'll always dispel a myth. But you don't have to be on the same job 2 years, and it is okay if you change jobs. But you have to talk to your lender first. You can't, because it is going to go off the base pay. So some people take other jobs that have lower base pay but bigger bonuses and stuff, can't use those bonuses. So it's kind of like a marriage. You have to talk throughout the whole process or something's going to get missed. So sorry to interrupt there, but I guess I knew you needed to know that, right?
That's really good. It's good.
This is what's great about having you. You get
Yeah.
all your questions answered today.
Exactly. And the next thing to think about also is not skipping on a home inspection.
Yes.
Can I ask you, do you think your lender would actually skip an appraisal? Right?
And also, as a lender, I think I'm the only one in this area that does this. I do not charge for appraisals up front. So what that means is normally, I know you didn't know that either. They're getting smart today. Look at that. So what happens is normally the buyers have to choose, because a lot of buyers, they may have some money saved up, but if you put, how much is an inspection?
About $400-500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you pay $400 or $500 for an inspection, then let's say you pay $500 or $600 for an appraisal, that's easily $1,100. A lot of people don't have that on day one. What we do at Fairway is we do not charge for the appraisal up front. So that, because we want our buyers to get an inspection and we don't want them to have to choose. So you would pay for the inspection, then that appraisal would be part of your closing costs at the end that either the seller is going to pay as part of closing costs, or you'll bring it to the closing table. But that gives you that 30-day period to come up with that, money on that. So we don't charge for appraisals up front. I think we're the only one that does it. Yeah.
That's really good, because then at least you don't get to skip for the around
Yes,
that.
we
on
never
that, so.
want, because an appraisal, a lot of people don't understand, an appraisal is just taking the amount that the seller's selling the house for. Let's say it's $185. They're just verifying that that makes sense in the market. They're not necessarily, that's why if you bought that house, you may get it appraised 4 months later to sell and it may be worth more. They're just telling you that that value that you're buying it for is correct or not correct, right? Rarely see an appraisal come in a lot over. It will come in under if it's not right for the area. So the appraisal has to be done, but the inspector, he's looking in the attic, he's checking for mold, he's doing a lot of different things. He or she are doing a lot of different things, checking appliances, all those kind of things that a lot of times an appraiser is not diving as deep on that.
And I will say this, an inspector is looking at the things that aren't typically noticed by buyers or even agents sometimes. They get down to the nitty gritty. It is a 3 to 4 hour inspection that they are going through everything, and that inspection report will come back and you will be intimidated. I will tell you this. It's like 45-ish, 50 pages of everything that is wrong with this house. Granted, some things are super minor, but they're reporting on it all. So inspection is vital to have. I would never pass an inspection or an appraisal in any situation. I don't care how much it costs.
You can sometimes get something called an appraisal waiver on conventional loans, which means you don't have to have an appraisal. Normally, it's up to the buyer, but I usually always suggest having an appraisal and an inspection. Now, the inspection, you don't want the lender to have a copy of that, because it's gonna, if a little tiny piece of that wood section is out a few inches, it's gonna put it on there, right? So it's everything. The inspection. And the appraisal more so is looking at the livability of the home, the roof, the AC HVAC system. So it's just two different things, and people a lot of times think it's the same thing, and it's two different things.
Exactly.
Big
So
picture versus small picture.
Yes.
well, the way I look at inspections and appraisals actually is you as a buyer protecting yourself with the inspection,
Yeah.
just like the seller, the lenders protect themselves with the appraisal. So that's how I look at both of that.
Yeah.
And not overbidding at a real estate auction. So try not to go to real estate auctions to overbid. Don't let other businesses pull your credit, because that also affects your score, or even co-signing on anybody else's loans. Spending money you have set aside for closing, changing bank accounts, making large deposits before checking with your loan officers. And that's because they want to make sure those funds are verifiable.
Can I add something there?
Definitely.
So when you're serious about buying a home, you have to be very careful with your checking account for a 60-day period, okay? So there is a rule that you have to have a a bank account. It can be a savings account or a checking account, but you have to have a bank account to purchase a home in the United States. All lenders that I know require it, okay? But what happens is a lot of people will, let's say, do a side job or get a gift from family and just deposit cash. Because of the rules of lending, cash is not allowed. So if we can't track that deposit, we can't use it. For instance, we had someone that had a large sum of cash they went and put in the bank. We could not track it. So in our world, it did not exist. So I always tell everybody, if you're going to deposit cash, make sure that you track where that cash came from. Get somebody to write you a check instead, so you can put it in there. But don't make any large deposits without the lender knowing. Now that doesn't mean, I had somebody one time call me at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, so they were going to Walmart and wanted to know if it was okay to use their checking account. We're not saying don't use your checking account. You have to live, but we're saying watch what goes in it, because if it is not trackable, it is not usable. You can also sell items to get the money. Let's say you have a couch or a car. You can sell items, but you have to get with your lender. Let's say you want to come up with 3.5% down to go FHA, and you have a lawnmower you want to sell. You have to get with the lender to tell you how to track it. Everything has to be trackable, or you can't use it. And that's because of the anti-terrorism laws. And you're laughing? I have sold, no, what's funny? I always laugh at that because I had somebody sell a couch. I've had somebody sell purses. And so the money doesn't necessarily have to be in your account when you apply. There's ways you can get it. Some loan programs run with a gift, mom and daddy or brother and sister. There's just a lot of different ways, but yeah, we're creative. We can sell lots of things. Isn't that cool?
Now for him, what would you consider the minimum for a large cash deposit?
Well, it's usually a certain percentage of your salary, and every loan program is different. But usually I am personally looking for anything over $500. Now, then if we have like one for $1,000 or $1,200, then we'll do the calculation based on your salary in the loan program and see if we can exclude that. But that's what we're looking for. It's funny because people say, well, I want to see my bank statement because I went such and such place. We could care less. We look at so many bank statements. I don't even look at debits. I am looking for the credits. Now the underwriters will look at debits to make sure that you're not paying debts that are not on your credit. So watch that too. Let's say you have girlfriend and you're going to pay her car note every month. It's a true story. It happens.
I know.
The underwriter is going to see that and ask, why are you paying the car note? Are you legally responsible to do so? So it's really kind of like an FBI probe. We're going to know everything, but we are your partner in getting it closed. So, yeah.
Do you have any questions so far?
He's getting so smart here.
Lots of information.
It's like I can sell couches and lawnmowers and
I can deposit more than $500.
Yeah.
And like I said, every loan program is different. So when you get pre-approved, we'll talk to you about deposits and everything. I don't like to give general numbers because every file is different, right? Your percentage of income may be different than mine or Grace's. So it's different. But the main thing is just put it all out on the line so that we can help you.
Makes sense. And the next point is buying a vehicle. That's a no-no. Because I had a person I know personally who bought a vehicle right before closing and she couldn't close. So she's still renting because of that.
See, I didn't, unfortunately, I wanted to, but I helped my friend co-sign on the vehicle right now. So, I mean, it's just like that.
Okay, so I have a question for that. How long has he had the loan?
I think we got it in June.
Okay, so let me tell you the rule on that. If you were a true co-signer, and we'll get a copy of that promissory note. Now, your debt to income with your money, with your income, you may be, first what we do is we pull your credit and we get all of your financial documents. When we look at your income and look at your debts, we'll include that debt of your friend. You may be able to budget with that. See, every file is different. But if you're not, let's say that that needs to go away or you can't buy a house. After he has paid on it a year, if we can prove, we'll get 12 months of payment history from him. If we can prove that he's made the payment for 12 months, now a lot of times they're going to want his bank statements to prove it because it's a law, right? But if we can prove he's made it for 12 months, we don't have to count it against you if you are a true co-signer. So don't worry about that. And also, just because you co-sign doesn't mean you won't budget with it. You may make enough income and you may not have many bills yourself. You may budget with that. We've also had situations where clients call, they're already pre-approved, but their car broke down and they have to get a new car. We will work with them because if they already had a car note, let's say that car note was $500 and they're going to get another car that's around that or a little bit less, we just get the promissory note and switch it out on credit. So it's, again, you see everything that she's saying, I say, well, we can have this or this because we have to talk about it, right? In lending, there are no really hard and fast rules. I mean, there's certain things about the appraisal and things like that, but when it comes to buyers and income and credit, there's gray lines there. We just kind of navigate it based on your situation. So now you've learned you may be okay with a co-sign car, and you're definitely okay with a job change because you have a history. So it's already looking better, right? Also, with the credit report, when I pull it, it's good for 120 days. So if you don't find anything in that time, we don't pull it again unless you ask us to. And also, I tell everybody, let's say I pull your credit and you just decide you don't like me or you don't like my options and you want somebody else to look at it. And most lenders won't tell you this, but if you have your credit pulled within the same 30 days from multiple lenders, they should get the same score, unless something hit in the middle. So that gives you freedom to find the loan program and the loan partner that's right for you.
Do you have any questions so far? Any other questions before we move on to the readiness tips?
Let's see.
On the next page.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think is the biggest step when you start this process? The first thing you need to do when you start the process?
I'll help you.
I don't know.
Sure.
Get pre-approved. Well, you have a realtor,
Yeah.
but you want to get pre-approved. So let me tell you about pre-approval. Can I explain that really
definitely.
quickly? I figure we're just going to go back and forth.
definitely. Go ahead.
So pre-approval, you will hear lenders say, oh, I can get you pre-qualified in 5 minutes. You need to run. Have you seen that movie where the guy runs and then he turns? That's what you have to do. Because a 5-minute pre-qualification does not mean that you're going to close a mortgage. So what I do is a full pre-approval. So let's say that you decided to apply. And let's say you apply on Monday. We get your application. We're going to pull your credit. Then we're going to let you know the list of documents we need. Now, we're super easy. If you are not self-employed and not trying to do USDA, which is 100% because they have their own rule. If you're doing FHA, conventional, or VA, I don't require tax returns. Did you know that? Okay. I don't require tax returns unless you're self-employed. So I would just get 30 days pay stubs, 2 months bank statements, copy of driver's license, and 2 years W-2s. That's it. If you're going for USDA, and we'll talk about what that is in a little while, they require taxes, so we get that, okay? So we look at everything, run it through the system. We do same-day pre-approval. So if you apply early in the morning and you turn everything in that morning, then you should have an answer in that afternoon. If you apply that afternoon, you'll usually have an answer the next day. Now, sometimes people have overtime and things we need to use, so we have to get a verification of employment. And that can take a couple days. So I tell everybody, and great realtors know, don't go look at a house until you're pre-approved. And don't wait until you find a house you want to see to get pre-approved. If you were thinking even about buying in the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever, I would go ahead and have your credit pulled. Because the online, like Credit Karma and all those are Vantage systems and different type FICOs. We pull a true tri-merge FICO. So we'll look and tell you what you need to do to get ready to buy, and you may be ready and decide to wait, and that's okay too. But pre-approval is the first step, but it's very important. It's very important to let the lender do everything they have to do, because when I tell Grace we can go, let me find some wood here to knock on.
That is not
We're gonna
good.
go. Well, there's wood. Okay, here's some wood. Here's some wood. We're gonna, what is sheet rock wood?
Yeah.
If we tell you to go, we go. We have 100% close rate, but that's because we do full doc pre-approval. So that's super important. And a lot of buyers, if I don't turn everything in, I just want to know what I qualify for. That's a pre-qualification, and you may never get to the table. So I tell everybody, be prepared to give us everything, but if you give us everything, you'll have an answer and we'll close. How's that?
And that's really important to get the pre-approval out the way, because that really, when I have you on the 10-step process, that takes you from step 1 to step 5, right?
Look at us. We skipped
Because
5 steps.
you're already
Look at that.
ahead 5
Yes.
steps when you get pre-approved, because then we are just thinking about what is the next best move, which is getting your criteria in order. So in that time, in fact, you need to already know what you want, your needs. So we try to figure out exactly what are your needs so we can focus on those needs. Is it a 2-bedroom? Is it a 3-bedroom? And I share that you have to have goals also. What are your goals through this process? SMART goals. SMART goals, I don't know if you're familiar with the acronym. SMART is S for simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. I used to say when I started, God help us get a house this year. That was not a SMART goal. It was a goal, but it wasn't a SMART goal because it wasn't specific. It wasn't time sensitive also, because then I should have put December 31st, 2023. Like that, because you have to be that specific. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, maybe such and such neighborhood. Make sure you can see that vivid goal and vision that you have for that house, because that's literally you're bringing it into fruition. So once you get to that criteria on step 6, it'll come easy, because once you walk into that home, you already know it, because you've envisioned it all along. And with that, we get to make an offer. That's the easiest thing, because once you know exactly what you want, of course, we make an offer. Hopefully, that offer gets accepted. But there are 2 other ways that offer can come up to us. What do you think the other 2 ways they can respond if they don't accept the offer?
No.
They can deny it. So if they deny it, or they can counter. It's called a counter offer. So just in case they deny it, we can still respond and ask them what exactly can we do so they can accept our offer. And if they counter, the counter is literally them saying there are a few things that we like about your offer, but if you change it to these terms, then we can accept your offer. So it's a negotiation process. And finally, once the offer is eventually approved, we move on onto the inspection period. The inspection is not really required, but I highly recommend it for the reasons I mentioned, that you're covering yourself. And the appraisal, like Christy mentioned, that you don't have to get an appraisal, but I still recommend it to know exactly the value of your home.
You have to get an appraisal. You have to, unless you get a waiver.
Mm-hmm.
But a waiver is usually only on conventional loans. So 9 out of 10 times you're going to have to get an appraisal. But it usually only takes, right now, like 5 to 7 days. And like I said, we don't charge for it up front, so it's all at the end. So that's helpful as well.
And both of them don't take a lot of time. Because literally, if you get accepted, you can even do it in 1 day, less than a week.
Yeah.
So whatever we have in the contract, sometimes we put it in as 7 days to 14 days. whatever we agree on for the inspection period. And once that period is done, that's when the appraisal process starts. And once that's done, then we move on to the underwriting, and they do all the paperwork to make sure everything is right to prepare for the closing. And the next thing would be the final walkthrough. I recommend the final walkthroughs to make sure, at least those 5 days before you close, make sure that that same house that you put an offer in
Looks the same.
exactly, everything that you're hoping to see in the house is still the same. So that's why I recommend the final walkthrough.
What's great about the final walkthrough is normally everything's off the wall. So the things that maybe you didn't see when you first saw it, you can kind of re-inspect to make sure everything looks really good.
And to ensure that whatever you did request in an inspection had been completed. I've had multiple times where they did not complete the inspection, what they requested to be fixed from the inspection, and closings got delayed and even canceled because they didn't fix what they had to fix. So final walkthrough is very important.
Very true. Yeah. And then once we get through that, will be the closing. Make sure you get those signatures down and move into your home sweet home.